Good afternoon. Hi. So let me make this really quick, but just a couple things from me before we start. If you are in 100A, you are in the right place. Just make sure you got that piece of paper so that you can sign and turn that in. If you didn't get one, look for Peyton over here, and make sure that you get one on the way out so that you get credit for that as well. Of course, you've swiped, you get credit from Music 100. I just want to remind you too, the next 2 Fridays will be our student showcase performances. So those are going to be really special, and you want to make sure you plan to be here for those. A lot of you still need a lot of points in the performance category, and those will count. Those only will give credit if you're here in person. So please plan to be here for the next 2 Fridays to see those events. Thanks.
Hello. Welcome, everyone. My name is Sarah Williams. I'm Associate Professor of Music History here in the School of Music and Area Coordinator of the History Area and the Coordinator of Peak Colloquium, the event at which you are sitting right now. I'm very privileged to introduce our guests today. Before I do, I want to just remind you that we will have a Q&A at the end of the presentation, and I invite you to please line up behind the microphone there in the audience. If you have questions, so we can engage as many people as possible in our limited time together. I know many of you have to leave at 2 p.m., and if you do, please make your way. If you can spare a few extra minutes and have a question, don't be shy. And so I am now very pleased to welcome to Peak Colloquium today the Kronos Quartet and Janet Cowperthwaite, Executive Director of the Kronos Performing Arts Association and Manager of the Kronos Quartet. The San Francisco-based quartet, founded by David Harrington, violin, with John Sherba, violin, Hank Dutt, viola, and Sonny Young, cello, is a Grammy Award-winning ensemble and one of the most widely celebrated and influential groups of our time, playing thousands of concerts worldwide, working with many of the world's leading composers, releasing more than 60 recordings of extraordinary breadth and creativity, and commissioning more than 1,000 works and arrangements for string quartet. Today, they'll be discussing with us their 50 for the Future commissioning project, a library of 50 works designed to guide young amateur and early career professional string quartets in developing and honing the skills required for the performance of 21st century repertoire. Each of the 50 works will be an artistically complete composition that will be premiered by Kronos with the entire 50 for the Future body of work becoming a core component of its own repertoire. Since the 2015-2016 launch of 50 for the Future, the Kronos Learning Repertoire, in partnership with Carnegie Hall, the initial scores have been downloaded more than 20,000 times in 98 countries and territories worldwide. Please join me now in welcoming Janet Cowperthwaite and the Kronos Quartet.
Good afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you all for coming. As introduced, my name is Janet Cowperthwaite, and I've actually just celebrated 40 years with Kronos, because when I started, I was in college. So that's been a long time, and we've done a lot of things together. But one of the things that is probably our most favorite is what we're here to talk about today, which is 50 for the Future, the Kronos Learning Repertoire. So as was mentioned, we launched this program in the 2014-15 season. Kronos celebrated its 40th anniversary in the 2013-14 season. And one of the things we thought we would do was come up with a really big idea for what we called the 5th decade of Kronos. And Kronos, through the years, has done and did a lot of coaching and working with young musicians. One of the things they noticed when they were out and about, like they are here now, was that they would be asked to coach repertoire that was almost the same repertoire that they learned with, and sometimes there was no contemporary repertoire at all to coach. So we thought, and David will speak more about this in a moment, but why don't we come up with our own repertoire, 50 new pieces, 50 pieces that we can commission and publish and record and perform, and then put on our website so that anyone else can do the same. And so that was the idea. And we were in a conversation with our partner, Carnegie Hall, and they were celebrating their 125th anniversary, and they wanted to commission 125 new works, which was kind of making the people who were going to do that work the top of their head spin, because it was so many commissions. So in a meeting with them, we said, well, let us take 50 of those off your hands. And so they became our lead partner in 50 for the Future, and we put all the details together for the program, and we launched it, as mentioned, in 2014. It's the largest education program. It's the largest program of any kind, actually, that we've ever done. We are a nonprofit organization based in San Francisco, so the quartet you see here, and we have a staff that works with us in our offices. And so this became just a huge driving force of all of our work over the last years. So the idea is, as stated, that the works are commissioned, and they were commissioned 10 each year over the first 5 years, and then Kronos would premiere them, and then they would be available. In order to fund a program like this, because it was really a big deal, we brought together a whole bunch of different partners. Carnegie came in first, and then we found 50 other partners, festivals, presenters, all kinds of people from all over the world, actually, conservatories, that helped us with the funding of this project. So that's kind of like the architecture of it. Oh, and I wanted to say one thing. It was mentioned about the number of downloads and such, and that number's even increased now. Now we've seen that there have been over 23,000 downloads in 103 countries and territories. So each time we see these numbers go up, we're just absolutely thrilled, because what we want is for the music to be out there and performed and played and heard. So we're thrilled every time we see those numbers. We have a wonderful website that you can check out if you haven't already. And there's a little demonstration of it here, but it's on our regular kronosquartet.org website. There's a section about 50 for the Future. And there you can see information about each of the composers. You can download the music, score and parts. You can read about the bios of the different composers. You can, if there are any special performance notes, all of that is included in the website. We've been really pleased with how this website has been taken and used a lot by many people. And so far, there are 40 pieces up there. And of course, there will be 50. There'll be another 5 released in about January of this coming year, we hope. And then there'll be the final 5 later in the spring. So by the end of this academic year, all 50 of the works will be there. We've been not only thrilled with the performances of many, many groups around the world, but also the pieces have now been used in films. They've been used in dance. Kronos has actually performed live with new choreography. So we've been also happy to see them used in those kinds of ways. I wanted to have David start by, now that I've sort of described the architecture of the program, he can talk more about the artistic choices and what Kronos is trying to achieve with the various composers that have been brought in.
Well, what we want to do is give every quartet doorways that they can travel through easily to explore the world of music. And when Kronos started out, for example, I didn't know, and this was in 1973, I didn't know any string quartet music from anywhere in Africa or Asia or South America. Basically, what I learned as I was growing up was music from Europe and a little bit from the United States. And so what we've tried to do is give other quartets an opportunity to explore the kinds of things that have taken 48 years arrive at. And so I think if you dive into 50 for the Future, you'll find all sorts of sounds. For those of you who are composers, you'll also find all kinds of different ways of notating music. What we're trying to do is give other players tools to be able to play anything that comes their way. Of course, music is something that's always growing, always changing, and at some point, 50 for the Future will need to be updated, of course, but it's a start.
Just to add on to that for a moment, David, one of the things that was the funnest part of 50 for the Future was when the quartet would decide which 10 pieces, which 10 new works would be composed next. I would get to have the fun job of letting our partners know that, and particularly our partners at Carnegie, because they were the lead partner. So I would show them the list of names, and they would know some of the names, but not all of the names. And so I always thought that the quartet, David and the quartet, had done a beautiful job if no one knew all of the names on the list. It was very purposeful to approach some of the relationships, artistic relationships, composers we've had with them, and also to find some new composers and to have a very diverse kind of expression. Do you want to talk a little more about that, David?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the world of music is a mosaic of possibilities. And I remember when I was 14 years old and all the quartet music that I had played was written by 4 guys, white guys, that lived in one city. And I just remember looking at the globe one day and thinking, this is weird, that I didn't know any music by anybody from any other city, or I hadn't played it, I mean, at age 14. And so I resolved that somehow this had to change. And for me, 50 for the Future is an expression of that change. And I mean, in 50 pieces, you can't do everything, but you can do something. And so if you listen to the music, look at it, explore it, play it with your friends, you will find all sorts of different ways of relating to your instrument, of thinking about life, of thinking about sound and musical culture, and you will find yourself doing things you never thought you would do before as a player, as a performer.
Thanks. As you can see in the photo, one of the things that happens when Kronos goes on tour, in addition to performing the pieces as part of the concert programs frequently, is we plan for members of the group to coach young ensembles, students in the places we go. This happened here yesterday, and it happens many, many places where Kronos travels, and it's one of the most important and I think fun parts of this project. Hank, yesterday you had a coaching session here. Maybe some of you were part of that. Do you want to describe that?
Sure. As Janet said, that we travel all over, and we are fortunate to coach many young people on the music of this 50 for the Future. And yesterday, and also I wanted to say that a lot of the music is some of it's very, very difficult, and then some of it's on a levels that the younger player actually can use too. So it suits a lot of levels of playing. And yesterday, my group, or the group I got to coach, which was a joy, played a piece by Frangis Alizadeh, which is one of the harder works. It's a very difficult work to get to play. And it was really, really fun for me. First of all of them played really well. But it's one of the great things for me was to be able to impart my insight or my, because we worked on the pieces so well, so hard, and so they're really ours in a way, and to impart my feelings and my ideas to them. And what was really exciting too was to see them blossom. I mean, at one point, it was so exciting because they made great music, and it was at a really high artistic level. And so for me, it was just terrific, just really terrific. So thank you for the quartet if they're here. I see Jordan's right here in the front here, but I don't see anybody else. But they were really terrific, and we had such a fun time doing it.
One of the first partners that we worked with is an organization in New York City called Face the Music. It's part of the special music school at the Kaufman Music Center. And Kronos started coaching those students actually before 50 for the Future. And that relationship with those students and that institution was part of the thing that enabled us to form this idea, actually. So we have a little clip here of Kronos playing with students from Face the Music. It was filmed in 2017 at the Green Space in New York City, and it'll just be a little excerpt of a piece by Wu Man, which is called Silk and Bamboo. Thanks. One of the things we like to plan frequently, as you would have seen there in that clip, is for some of the students that Kronos has been working with to actually join Kronos on stage. That's always really fun, and they just did that again last month with some Face the Music students at Merkin Concert Hall. The music you heard is also not necessarily what one might think about as string quartet music, which is again one of the major focuses of this project. Another composer that we've worked with, and I'm going to ask Sunny about this one, is a wonderful singer from Mali. We met her because she's part of a group called Trio de Kali. Her name is Awa Kasi Made Diabate, and she's really an amazing singer. And we approached her and asked her to write for 50 for the Future. These pieces you can hear on the website and play if you wish. But Sunny, you want to talk about that relationship a little bit?
Sure. As Janet mentioned, Awa Diabate is a wonderful singer from Mali. And she, so there's this tradition in Mali where they teach young girls some songs with incorporating clapping. So she wrote us four movements of clapping songs. And so each movement we take, one of us will clap and the other three will play. And so it's a wonderful way for us to learn the tradition and of course the sound world of Mali. One of the wonderful things that I love about music from that part of the world is just the simplicity of the sound world and how the time seems so still and almost timeless. It's so easy for us to get, when we live here, especially now with all the technology, it's so easy for us to get caught every day with to-do list. We're always so focused on what's coming next. But when I listen to this music, I feel like there's none of that. It's just music, pulse, and a simple melody, and that is such a gift that the hour has given us. So I hope you can go to the website, listen to her perform, and of course our performance as well.
Thanks, Sunny. And we actually have a little example of this also on a clip. That full film is on our website, and I'd welcome you to have a look at it. It's really full of joy. The woman singing with Awa is actually her daughter, whose name is Rokia. Wonderful, wonderful musicians. So our project was going along really beautifully, and we were very pleased with it. And then we had this thing happen called the pandemic. And as for everyone in this room, and everywhere for that matter, we had a disruption because, of course, Kronos couldn't rehearse together for a long time. And so we had to sort of stop some of the work because the concerts were canceled. You know the story. I don't need to go into what happened. But it was frustrating, obviously, for many reasons, and because it was creating a delay. And David had a brilliant idea, and I was going to ask David to talk about the idea and then John to talk about the execution of it, to commission one of the 50 for the Future pieces just immediately from a composer whose name is Angelica Negron. She's Puerto Rican living in New York, and the piece is called Marajada.
Yeah, well, as you know, there was a time when there was no possibility of rehearsing, playing together. We were all having meetings on Zoom and telephones and all this. And so it occurred to me, okay, well, we have to figure out a way to make a piece that can be played on Zoom. And the composer that came to my mind was Angelica, because she has this kind of inner plasticity of viewpoint, and she just makes things happen, no matter what's going on. And so she lives in Brooklyn, and at that point, Brooklyn was one of the centers of COVID death. And as she was writing her piece, I remember calling her and hearing ambulances taking people to the hospital right near her home. And she wanted to create something that somehow surmounted that. And Angelica came up with this idea of, as you know, on Zoom, you can create a virtual background. And so she thought, all right, well, let me talk to an artist friend of mine and see if maybe he can make a special background for this piece I'm going to write. And so she did that. And then we started learning how to play it individually, and eventually we recorded it on Zoom. And the cool thing is, as you know, trying to play on Zoom, things are not really together. Well, in this piece, it doesn't matter. In fact, it's better if it's not together. And so that's what we did.
Yeah, hearing about this, it kind of takes me back to those times. And I remember right before COVID, the first wave hit, I think we had approximately about 10 more of the 50 of the For the Future pieces to record. And then here we are in this situation. We can't get together in our little room in San Francisco because we really wanted to do our part and be safe. And no rehearsing, we couldn't rehearse. And so, I think we all thought, well, we'll try and maybe work on these 10 that we had remaining through Zoom and maybe work on bowings and fingerings and play together a little bit through Zoom. And, how many of you have tried, playing music on Zoom? It's difficult. It's very, very difficult. And, some of the pieces that we tried, they had the 16th note pulse where everybody had to be together and had to react together, and that's impossible, totally impossible on Zoom. And so as Janet said, David actually came up with this brilliant idea to ask Angelica, who's this incredible creative force, what could you do so that groups from all different parts of the world could play a piece together on Zoom? It was a great idea, fantastic idea, and she was definitely the person, who came up with something. And so she sent us the parts, and it was, very graphically notated, actually. And there were no running 16th notes together that had to be exactly played together and in unison. And so we put it together on Zoom, and it worked beautifully. And then we asked groups from around the country, would you like to join us and play this piece? And we did that with groups from East Coast, the Midwest, joining us, and it works. So, if you need a piece, if a fourth wave of COVID comes through and it gets even worse and you need a piece to play with some of your friends in another part of the country, this piece will actually work. It'll be fun, and it'll have a very deep emotional impact too, So check it out.
One of our spring activities that we couldn't do last year in person was a concert that's focused around working with high school age students. So because we had this piece that we've just described with, as David mentioned, the background by a wonderful artist named Justin Favela, we brought six schools from around the country, 100 students joining Kronos to play this piece. Students from Honolulu, Dallas, Washington, D.C., Oakland, San Francisco, and New York. And we have a little short clip just so you can see what it looks like and you can see the background. You can see that whole performance also on our website. And after the section that you saw, it gets into using other kinds of instruments too, right? Percussion instruments. And, so we have, again, 50 pieces, and we're not going to be able to talk about each and every one, obviously. But we're in South Carolina, so I thought we would focus on a piece from a South Carolina composer. David, do you want to introduce? We have a little clip of you performing Testimony.
So I was having a meeting with some friends of mine from the American Folklife Center, the Library of Congress, and I just happened to mention, my wife and I had seen this beautiful documentary about Gullah culture on television, and I just realized there was nothing in the string quartet realm that I know of that represented anything about Gullah culture. And so I was talking to these guys at the American Folklife Center, and I just mentioned that. And they said, well, I have an idea. They had an idea. And so it was a week or so later, I was in touch with Charlton Singleton, and Charlton made this piece called Testimony.
Oh. Thank you. They should say thank you. So 40 of these pieces are there for you to download and play and listen to. 10 more coming within the next 6 months. Some of the composers, if you haven't had a chance to look at the website, just to name a few, I'm not going to name all 50, Laurie Anderson, Ken Benshoff, Raven Chacon, Aftab Darvishi, Inti Figgis Vizueta, Rhiannon Giddens, Philip Glass, Zakir Hussain, Angelique Kijot, Missy Mazzoli, Aruna Narayan, Jay Lynn, Terry Riley, Tanya Tagaq, just to give a little sense of how truly wide-ranging these pieces are, both musically and culturally and in every other sense. Before we head into the Q&A, I know that you can't possibly pick a favorite because there's too many, but do you each maybe want to just say a quick thing about one of the pieces you especially love? Give it a commercial.
Just before this gathering, I was listening to a second edit of music of Terry Riley. And we've worked with Terry for over 40 years. It's about 40, almost 45 years at this point. And so he's 85 years old. He is so creative. And I was just marveling at his genius in listening to this piece and how much fun he has brought into the realm of music and now into 50 for the Future. And So we're in the process of making that recording just as good as we can, and it'll be available to you very shortly.
I'm not a parent, but I've heard it said that, when parents are asked, which is your favorite child, and they just cannot say, that we love all our children equally. And so I think that's the case with 50 for the Future. There's great things on each piece that send me. But I would say I would like to point out one piece that is really great because it allows, as you saw, the Woman is played with other people. The Philip Glass piece, Quartet Satz, is really terrific because we play that many times with several people on stage, and it really works well as a string orchestra work. And so that is inclusive, and it's such a gem. And I remember when we first played it, around some really thorny pieces. And when we first played it, then we heard a collective sigh from the audience going, they just loved it. It's just such a beautiful work. And so so check it out and have fun with it.
Like Hank said, I just love all of the pieces. They each offer something very unique. One piece that really sticks out in my mind, though, is the Zakir Hussain piece. And he actually joined us on the tabla, and as everybody knows, he's the master of rhythm. He's unbelievable, and just to be able to play with him, learn from him, be in the same room with him, see how he approaches the rhythm, being very relaxed. But what strikes me about the piece, it's difficult, and if anybody wants an incredible challenge, try and tackle that one. And I remember, I think we were all on the edge of our seats while we were learning the piece and later when we were performing the piece, because it is really a challenge, both rhythmically and also to capture the style that he wanted from that part of the world. So, if you want an incredible challenge, check out Zakir Hussain.
I was going to say Zakir, but I'll mention another one, which is another Malian composer called Lassana Diabate. And there are 5 movements, and the first movement is a solo for violin, first violin, second movement is solo for... So anyway, we each have a solo movement, and it's a wonderful piece. And of course, for cellists in this room, the cello movement called Nana, now I can't remember the title, but the cello movement is so gorgeous. It's very tender, a little bit sad, and that's kind of my thing. I like sad things, so yeah, check it out.
And
One more. Another composer I was in touch with this morning is Tanya Tagaq, and I invite everybody here to check out her piece and just what she says about life and music and sound. She's from the northernmost part of Canada, and she is part of a tradition called she practices a tradition called throat singing. And as I told her one time, I said, Tanya, you have a string quartet in your throat. And anyway, she's doing a new piece for us right now, and I just heard it this morning. It's really good.
And I was just going to mention a last thing, which is one of the perhaps unexpected initially things that's happened with 50 for the Future, but we're extremely pleased and delighted about, is that some of the pieces have been adopted for other instruments. So Sunny mentioned the piece by Lassana Diabate. That piece has been arranged for 4 saxophones, for example. Wuman's work has been arranged for 4 pipas, and so on. Several of the pieces have been made into string orchestra pieces, as Hank said. So they're out there to be creative with. They don't need to stay only in the string quartet realm.
Tanya's piece 4 recorders, too.
That's right. There was a whole concert
Yeah,
with
whole
4
concert.
recorders. So they're there for anyone, any player. So I wonder if there are any questions for us.
Hi, I'm a really huge fan of y'all and this project, and a lot of the music makers who are included in the project exist outside of a Western concert music tradition, and if I understand the process correctly, you didn't ask them to sit down and write a string quartet. You asked them to make music the way that they made music, and then you did the job, or an arranger did the job of translating that into string quartet repertoire. So I was wondering how you guys kept the integrity of the original piece while still making it good string quartet music.
Well, there's a really good example of that will be coming out on the final 5 pieces come out in April. And that's music of Penny Kondrarini from Indonesia. And so what Penny did is she created her song called Madhuswara. She performed it with her group. She sent us the recording, and that recording became the score. And one of the things that we instantly discovered was that it was in a very difficult key for our instruments. So that key had to be changed. Additionally, there's one note of the scale that's very strange for Western ears. And so I think it was Hank and Sonny found a way to, when we were rehearsing, to play that pitch. I think it's a G sharp, isn't it? It's a D sharp that is flat, a quarter tone flat. Oh, it's a D quarter tone sharp, sorry. Man, I knew I'd been playing that note wrong for a long time. But eventually what we did is, and here's where Zoom is really great. We did a performance for Penny. It was 10 o'clock at night her time, and she's got a young child, so that was very late for her. And we performed her piece for her and rehearsed in that way over Zoom. And we've done that with quite a few of the composers as well. So in terms of the, well, I should say she was kind of ecstatic to hear her music. And I was a little worried because my part is actually her voice part. And so trying to be a great vocalist is tough to do on a violin. So anyway, and the other members of the group, their roles were gamelan. And so how do you become a gamelan? And the reason we wanted Penny to write a piece for us was that issue has never really been solved properly in the string quartet repertoire until now. And I can't wait for you to hear this piece. It's just wonderful.
It's also so important to work with the composer too, and with all of the composers for the project, we had that chance. You know, it's really a wonderful thing to do. And if you go to the site, you know, there will be interviews with the composers, there will be demonstrations, and so, you know, that's a little bit like working with a composer, but I wouldn't be surprised if you wanted more information. I bet they'd be thrilled if you called them up and said, you know, we're playing your piece from 50 for the Future, and pose your question to them. But it's always great to be able to work with them. Yeah.
I find that arrangements, which this is an arrangement of an actual work, and the arranger is very, very important because he or she has to understand the source material, but also understand the quartet and what it's able to do and how it can transform into that source material. And this, we had an earlier arrangement of this piece that David mentioned, and it just didn't work at all. It didn't, and we said, this isn't, and so then we asked to have that changed. And so we're trying to maintain the integrity of the source material, of the actual performance that these artists have done, and they're amazing, and hopefully we've done right by that.
I want to add a good an example of Tanya Tagaq. Because she's a throat singer, we had to come up with a whole different set of notating different sounds or quality of expressing throat singing. And so for that, we had to work very closely with Jacob, who arranged it. But most importantly, we used her performance of the piece as a score. So we tried to come up with as varied different sounds that she makes, and then we play for her and she gives us feedback. So it's really like how do you say, there's 6 of us in the quartet when we do something like this. There's the arranger and the composer, and we all work together to come up with a score.
It's a really good question. Thank you. And that's very intentional, obviously, to work with composers who come from an oral tradition, perhaps, or other ways of music making, right? Any other questions? No.
I have a question.
Oh.
How many of you play string quartet music? Oh, cool. How many of you wish you played string quartet music? Great. Well, we all invite you to check out 50 for the Future, and any of you, even if you don't play an instrument, you can dive in and learn lots of stuff and have a lot of fun.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. I wanted to thank you all for this wonderful presentation. I also wondered, this is actually a request maybe, rather than a question. Janet, I wondered if you could talk briefly about what's happening this weekend, about the concert on Sunday, because it's something you all can attend, and you can attend for free. So, if you don't mind, thank you.
Oh, no, I'd be thrilled to. The reason that we're here is to do the first performance, a preview performance of a new work called At War with Ourselves, 400 Years of You. The words are written by Nikki Finney, whom many of you likely know. She's a star, and she's here at the East University. The music is written by Michael Abels. It's for quartet and choir and narrator, an evening-length work. We started working on this project in 2011. That's how long we've been thinking about this piece. It was ready to go, and we were set to come here a couple of years ago, but again, delay. And we're absolutely thrilled to be here. It felt important to do the rehearsing and the premiere here because it's Nikki's home, and it's a community that we hadn't visited before, so we feel incredibly welcome and honored to be here to do the premiere of this piece, which we're all thrilled with. So please come and check it out. 3 o'clock on Sunday. We'd love to see you. It's a big house, lots of room, right? Yep. Thank you. Thank you all for coming today.